Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about science and policy in the decision-making process, particularly as the United States addresses Arctic issues. But before I do that, I just want to say a word of thanks to President Grimson, not only for the Arctic Circle, but for really being the Arctic ambassador to the world. You have reached out personally, professionally, to many people all over the world, explaining not only what the Arctic's all about, but why they should care. And that has made a tremendous difference in a very short period of time. So I want to say thank you. And I'd also like to say thanks to Alice Rogoff, and I know she's going to be embarrassed by this, but Alice has been a partner with President Grimson from the beginning, actually before these started 3 years ago, back in Alaska, when the first meeting really was held that kind of geared up to where we are today. It's been quite phenomenal to watch the change, and both of these people, along with a whole host of others who are in this room today, should really feel very good about the progress that has been made, not only in bringing attention to the Arctic, but bringing together a sense of we are all in this together. It is not one country, it is not one leader, it is not one effort, it is our responsibility in our very, very important and long-lasting, hopefully, stewardship of this special region, which is both very valuable and very vulnerable. I am honored to live in Alaska and have for over 40 years. And I would have to say that every day I am reminded of what an extraordinary place the Arctic is, not only because of its beauty and its resources, its cultural richness, but also the way in which it challenges us to think differently about how we do business, how we relate to each other, and how we think about our place in the world. Even though technically the United States has been an Arctic nation ever since the United States purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867, it's really only been sort of recently that the United States has recognized its responsibility as an Arctic nation. Unlike many of you who come from other Arctic regions where the Arctic is an important part of your identity, that isn't really quite true in the United States, but we're working on it. And as you have heard from Mark and others here this morning, the way in which the United States has stepped up its attention and commitment to the Arctic in recent years is really quite phenomenal. We have seen a sea change in the attention that is being paid, not only by the President, by Congress, by our federal agencies, by our scientific establishment, by our private sector, but also the community at large. And I am happy about that, but I am also convinced that as we move forward in increasing all of our action, we have to remember that this is a place where there are still many unanswered questions. And those unanswered questions really cry out for data observations, information, scientific research, and a shared understanding of our way of moving forward in a responsible way. So I would just say that all of the things that we have been talking about for the last several days, whether it is shipping or oil and gas, whether it's climate change adaptation or national rights and responsibilities, really rests on the foundation of better information, which comes from the scientific research and the indigenous knowledge of the region in a way that really asks us to make much more of a commitment to not only funding the research and the information sharing, but also in thinking about what it is that we need to do together to be able to truly understand this very, very large and challenging region. So I would just submit that as we make these commitments, and as Mark noted, the President has stepped up in his commitments to the Arctic. I think he actually fell in love with the Alaskan Arctic when he was up last month. These things that we are moving forward with really do require hard work. They require commitment in terms of funding. They require commitment in terms of research and development, and they require a new way of thinking about how we work together as a society and work together across national borders. So very, very briefly, I want to say a word about the scientific coordination that happens in the United States and how that supports many of our efforts in the Arctic region. As was mentioned back in the 1980s, the Arctic Research Commission was created by Congress. It's a presidentially appointed commission, and alongside of it, the IARPC, or the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee, was created as a way of kind of organizing the federal government's research in the Arctic. And for many of you, that may be more than you want to know, but on the other hand, if you really want to understand where the investments are being made in terms of US research effort in the Arctic, many of you know about the National Science Foundation, but you may not fully appreciate the extent to which our federal agencies, like the Navy and the Coast Guard and the Department of Interior and NOAA and many, many others, make a significant commitment to Arctic research so that they can fulfill their statutory responsibilities, but also so that they can work across government and with the private sector to make better decisions. That's really what it's all about. Whether you're in the public sector or the private sector, you need this kind of investment and you need this kind of collaborative work if you want to make better decisions. So if you go to the U.S. Arctic Research Commission's website, you will be able to get some insight into not only our goals and objectives, but also how that relates to the IARPC effort and the federal agency investment. Arctic.gov is where you can go for that information, for our most recent report, for many workshop reports, and where you can go to sign up for something called the Daily Update. What is the Daily Update? The Daily Update gives you a snapshot of what is going on in the Arctic every single day. What political pronouncements have been made around the world, what recent research has emerged that might be of interest to you, upcoming meetings that may be relevant to your work, to your business, to your agency. It is a way of helping you find out all things Arctic. And now that all of you are lovers of the Arctic, even those of you who don't live there, you may want to sign up for this. So in closing, let me just say a couple of words about where we go from here. You know, as we think about what our stewardship responsibility is, and as you heard, that is really the theme of the U.S. chairmanship of the Arctic Council. We are very committed to thinking about how we can bring all of the forces to bear, not just from the United States, our various research entities, not only from the Arctic Council, which, as you know, since 1996 has really focused on both protecting the environment and promoting sustainable development, how we can bring those activities, all the activities that each and every one of you are contributing to in some way, to a higher level of understanding. Unquestionably, there is a lot of work being done in the Arctic science arena. The question is, can we move that to a different level so that it is more transparent, so that the information is more readily available, so that it can be not only of use to the scientific and research community and to the agencies that have to make decisions, but also to promote the world's understanding of how the changes that are taking place in the Arctic are affecting them and will affect them in the future. That is really our collective challenge. And as Mark mentioned, it is something that the United States hopes that in the next few years we can actually make some progress, some breakthrough on how we do that together as a community of people who care about the long-term well-being of the Arctic. Thank you very much.